To everybody and to the committee members. We're going to call the meeting of the Committee of Infrastructure of March 24th, 2021 at 7 p.m. via teleconference. As chairman of the Committee of Infrastructure, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. To access Zoom, please refer to the agenda or to the city's website for the meeting link. To join by phone, dial 1-929-205-6099. Meeting ID number is 837-2814-0708. Passcode is 073054. The public may also view the meeting via Channel 16. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting through the public postings. Instructions have also been provided on the City of Nashville's website at www.nashvillenewhampshire.gov and publicly noticed at City Hall and the Nashville Public Library. If anyone has a problem accessing the meeting via phone or Channel 16, please call 603-821-2049 and they will help you connect. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting via the methods mentioned above, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. So let's start the meeting by taking roll call attendance when each member states their presence. Please also state whether there's anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Alderman Schmidt, could you please call the roll?
I can. Alderman at Large, Michael O'Brien Sr.
I am present. I can hear the proceedings and I am alone.
Alderman Thomas Lopez.
I'm present. I can hear the proceedings and I am alone.
Alderman Jan Schmidt is here. She's alone in the room and she can hear the proceedings. Alderman Ernest Jetty.
I'm here alone and I can hear the proceedings.
And Alderman David Citenza.
I'm present. I'm alone and I can hear everyone.
Thank you. That's all 5 members, sir.
Thank you. And will the clerk please record also in attendance Dan Hudson, the city engineer, Tim Cummings, the downtown director. I forgot your official title, Mr. Cummings, please forgive me, but Director Cummings and Assistant Chief Steve Buxton. Also, Alderman in attendance is Alderman Klee. Is there anybody of note that I did? And Alderman June Karen. If there's anybody Alderman Dowd is also in attendance for Alderman. Is there anybody else I did not recognize? Good. That makes it easy. We got everybody. All right. At this time, we're going to open up the meeting for public comment. Is there anybody from the community at large would like to address a matter before the board? Seeing none, we're going to move on to a discussion. I was approached by, Economic Director Tim Cummings that he has additional information on the riverfront project that he would like to brief, and I find that very timely as spring is approaching. So at this particular time, I'll turn the meeting over to Director Cummings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development. I'm here tonight to hopefully provide just a high-level overview on the downtown Nashua Riverfront project. I have a slide deck prepared. I wanted to share my screen. But before I do that, I, again, just wanted to preface my comments tonight that this is just a status update where I just thought it would be good to kind of bring this project back before you and the public, and provide you with, you know, a very high level overview as to the work that's been done since the last time I presented, which was a little less than a year ago. I would say about somewhere between 8 and 9 months ago. And I thought it would just be good to revisit this project with you all. Happy to take any questions at the end and outline next steps so folks can plan accordingly. So if I may, Mr. Chair, I'm going to share my screen.
Please do.
See if I can do this here. All right, hopefully everyone can see my screen. Okay, so just to orientate everyone, the project I'm talking about is the Nashua Downtown Riverfront project, which is essentially scoped out to be basically, if folks want to kind of keep it in the back of their mind, from the Broad Street Parkway Bridge all the way down to what we refer to as the Pan Am pedestrian bridge, which is essentially right at the start of BAE, or right at the end of BAE, I should say, and on Canal Street. So the slide in front of you just has a very high level overview of where we're talking about in the downtown. Now, as you can see, and I zero in a little bit more, you can actually see the project area that I'm talking about. And what we have here is essentially the different segments or the different mini projects that are going to be all bundled into one infrastructure project for the city's benefit. So why are we doing this? So this came about from the downtown master plan that we did back in 2016, 2017 timeframe. And it was for accomplishing a few objectives: multimodal connectivity, access to the river, creating some better green space, increasing and improving our environmental stewardship, implementing floodplain resiliency techniques, and then ultimately economic development by enhancing the riverfront to make it a better performing natural asset for us, and hopefully a value proposition for our downtown. Here's just some slides that I pulled from the riverfront plan that we did previously, and my goal this evening is to provide that high level overview as an update to outline some of the changes that have come about due to further discoveries we've made as we've continued along in the design process. So we are currently at about 30% design approximately, or what you would refer to as preliminary design. We are just about nearing completion of this phase. My goal will be to come back before you or the entire Board of Aldermen. I defer to others as to how you'd like to present this information, but I would like to have a follow-on meeting after this when we get to preliminary design, so we can actually give you a more substantial and technical presentation with the engineers with me. Obviously, tonight's not going to be as detailed of a conversation. What I really wanted to do was just highlight some of the changes that have come about since we first started this project, and some of the reasons why these changes had to come about as we designed further and continued to plan on these improvements. As I said, we're kind of nearing the end of preliminary design. Next phase after this will be what's referred to as quote unquote final design. And that is something I'm hoping to get underway sometime before this summer or just about this summer. That'll take about 6 months or so. It will be another contract that you see before you sometime on the horizon. Again, so the project area, we typically think of it and define it as east and west. This evening, I'm going to just start on the east side of Main Street, and then I'll work my way over to, I'm sorry, let me rephrase. I'm going to start myself on the west side of Main Street and then work my way over east. So as the slide deck here on the west side outlines, starting on the north side at the very top corner, you're going to see that what is being proposed as a new ADA ramp connecting the Cotton Mill Transfer Bridge. That's this entity right here, along to the trail that's already in existence. And so this is to make it more ADA accessible. This is something that we have to do. It's a requirement. And we're actually trying to expedite this as fast as possible. And in fact, with some surplus funds that we have in preliminary design, because we're coming under budget on preliminary design, it looks like that we might use those funds to try to get to final design as fast as possible on this project, on this mini project, I should say, on this element of the project, because we are trying to conform with our federal regulators, federal DOT, who's made a point to point out to us that we should try to make this as ADA as accessible as fast as possible. So this is something we're working on. Now, what I will note also is when I was last before you, the idea actually was to try to do it on the west-hand side of the bridge. So originally what we were thinking was it was going to extend out this way. But as we started to design further, it became very clear due to environmental concerns, we were going to have to actually go to the east. So that's a change that has come about. I mean, essentially there's been no other change other than it flipped from being on the west side to the east side. Continuing along here, still looking to do everything like we previously discussed. We get to the floating dock in the substation screening. So really nothing has changed since the last time we discussed the sub-screening station. Really nothing has changed since what we've discussed with the ramp and the trail that would connect over to the existing trail over here. You know, that's just all, that is all continuing along as we thought it would. What has changed and what we're working through is the dock. So we had originally anticipated the floating dock being somewhere around the substation. We're not exactly sure where this floating dock is going to land. It may land a little bit further west, maybe along, again, to orientate everyone, we have the Greeley House here, Lofts 34 here, Cotton Mill right here. It may land somewhere along this riverfront edge on the north-hand side. Or conversely, it may land on the south side, somewhere between Parc de la Renaissance and Clock Tower in this area right here. As we designed further, we studied the area, it became clear that this area just didn't really have the water levels necessary to support a floating dock. Depending on the time of year, this area can get kind of dry. And so it was thought that it might be better to kind of move the location of the dock. It's still a priority to get a dock in this area. We're not saying we're going to move away from that, but where it is definitely becoming more clear. Again, looking to create a boardwalk along here is still the intention, and we are still designing to that. There's no issues there. Coming back around, wrapping around on now the south side, Bicentennial Park, looking to make that ADA accessible again for folks who may not realize it, from Water Street right here, from I believe this is 4 Water Street up to Main Street. This area right here has a significant grades that are not ADA accessible. We'll be looking to make some enhancements to Bicentennial Park, improve the park and the greenscaping as best we can, but with the primary goal of making it ADA accessible. So we'll take care of the grade change that is rather significant. Again, doing some boardwalks out in front of the office building there, and then connecting on to Parc de la Renaissance. And as you can see, Parc de la Renaissance has started to take form a little bit more than what you saw last time. Parc de la Renaissance is looking to be something designed like an oval in this area. There'll also be some improvements and changes to Water Street as time goes on. And then finally, looking to make improvements up and behind Clock Tower. Again, just trying to create that experience where people will feel comfortable using this area as a river walk. That is the ultimate goal that we're trying to do here, is to create a usable, active riverfront area that is accessible for all modes of transportation. Now, another change that's come about on the west side that I want to make sure folks are aware of. I want to make sure folks know that we originally had talked about and scoped out the idea of making a connection from here, the end of Clock Tower essentially, on all the way up to Pine Street Extension or the Broad Street Parkway, right in through here, and then ultimately try to create a pedestrian crossing somewhere in right around here or somewhere right in around here, so we could connect it to Mine Falls Park. We have held off designing any further on that phase for a couple reasons. The grade changes right in through here proved to be very challenging. And then it became cost prohibitive. So we decided to put a pin in this mini project for now. And if it looks like we have capacity in our budget, we will definitely revisit this element because we know making that connection to Mine Falls is very important to everyone, but making sure that we complete what we started out very early on saying, which is we wanted to have a complete circumference around the riverfront as our priority, is still the driving goal. And if we can make some connections to the other trails, we certainly will. So with that being said, here's just a view of what that cotton transfer ramp would look like, so folks can kind of see it and get a sense as to how it feels and lays out. So right here is the cotton mill building. We're about 21 feet away. We've sat with all the owners of the abutters, gave them updates. They've signed off on the various elements of the project. And so they're aware of these, everything that I'm showing you here. So folks can see how this kind of aligns with the existing path. So the boardwalk, so this is the boardwalk that we currently have, and this is similar to what we will be looking to implement. And that's what you'll see in front of Water Street, essentially. This is the office building that would be on the south side, southwest side of the riverfront. Again, just a visual aid to help you see the type of screening that we're talking about for the substation. And here's a closer look as to what appears to be taking shape for the idea of Bicentennial Park. And you can see how what essentially we're trying to do is, this is Main Street here, use the grade to our advantage to slowly wind down to get to essentially 4 Water Street. And then use this as a grade to our advantage, and slowly, because right now it's too steep from Main Street down to the corner here, to be ADA and wheelchair accessible. Here's another view of what we're talking about here, just showing how we're trying to achieve that. And then Parc de la Renaissance. So again, continuing on, here's the thought about how we would improve Parc de la Renaissance. by basically trying to create an amphitheater of sorts in and along through here, and making a pathway and riverwalk. I should note that there's a statue in through here, and we will absolutely maintain the provenance of that statue. It's going to have to shift. It will stay in this park exactly where. Hasn't been decided yet, but I want to make sure folks realize that it will have the reverence and the provenance that it currently has, but it can't stay in its current location if we're going to continue with the design that we've been talking about from the beginning. Again, here's another view of how that potentially could look. And so the reconfiguration of Water Street. So the idea to achieve this park and how we would do it, we would be looking to make Water Street one way in some sort of context all the way on up through. And again, we would be, because we're creating the green space down here, we all have always said that we want to maintain the same amount of parking. So we'd be looking to put parking in on Water Street. That would allow for the loss of parking that would come down here. We would just replace it right in up through here. So here's some visual aids to kind of show you what we're thinking for behind Clock Tower and how we're trying to improve that area from what it currently is. Again, just another different viewing of the Clock Tower area. So let's talk about the east side now. So pretty much the east side is going to stay the same as what was originally contemplated or talked about previously. There's been one change, but it's a significant or major change. So this along the north side, the northeast side here, this is the existing path here. So not a lot of changes happening in through here. Once we start to get to this area right here, Margaritas, and the BAE area right here, what was previously and is currently an undeveloped area, we're going to be looking to create that path and bring it on down to essentially right here is that Pan Am pedestrian bridge that I mentioned at the beginning of my remarks. After we've studied this pretty extensively, our engineers have recommended to us that we actually build a new bridge. We could preserve it, and that was the original intention, was to rehabilitate the current bridge, but from a cost to life benefit analysis, it wouldn't be worth our while to invest the money in the current structure. From a life expectancy for the investment we would be making, it would be wiser and more prudent to just build a new pedestrian bridge. Our engineers are suggesting it be somewhere in and along through here. We'll try to get it as close as we can to this bridge, but due to the grade changes on either side of the river, it's pretty tough. And trying to maintain that ADA accessibility, we have to make sure that the grades on the bridge stay at a certain level. So it looks as though the best place to put it is somewhere in and along here. So again, on the south side of the southeast side of the riverfront, looking to just improve upon the existing trail that we got in and along through here, make it ADA accessible, and then connect it on up to what we believe to be a future crossing of the 60 Main Street building with a boardwalk right here. So I will just bring you through some visuals so you can kind of see a little bit better what we're talking about. So here's the existing condition here, and this is what we're going to be looking to do as we continue along with design. You've probably seen this previously. This hasn't changed. The new pedestrian bridge is a newer element, and this is sort of what we're looking at here. And ultimately, this is the type of pedestrian bridge that we're looking to to put in something along these lines. And that's all I have for the update that I wanted to provide you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. I should say that we're still within the budget that we originally contemplated, approximately $15 million, though we haven't recosted this yet. I'm going to be looking to send it out to a third-party costing review to confirm what I'm being told by my engineers, which is it is within our scoped out budget. But again, that will be something that I would be looking to present to you when we get to our more technical and detailed presentation with the engineers, probably within the next 2 to 3 months. But again, I'm being advised that we are within our budget. So happy to take any questions if anyone has any.
Good. Thank you, Director Cummings. I'll open it up for questions, and I see the first guy in line, Alderman Lopez.
Thank you. So the first I put in the comment section because I didn't want to interrupt, but the name of the park, this is Francophonie Week, by the way, everybody. So Vive la France, is called Parc de Notre Renaissance Français. It means the Park of our French Renaissance. It is a mouthful, but I just want to make sure we pointed that out because you were kind of making it sound Spanish and I don't want to create a culture war. Additionally, I had some questions about the, or some suggestions about things to look for with regards to the designs that you mentioned. Kind of went over a lot of areas. So I'll just make the observations and then I'll end with a question, I guess. The first one is the footbridge that you mentioned, the handicap accessibility. The area that you're pointing to is around the midpoint of the Library Riverwalk. Unless you're planning on doing a lot of landscaping, the parking lot above that actually goes to a set of wooden stairs, which is pretty treacherous just for people who have all of their limbs operating. There's no way for a wheelchair to access it. So where you were pointing in general, if we did put a footbridge there, basically anybody riding a scooter or electric wheelchair or non-electric wheelchair, God help them, would have to go through most of the trail in order to get there, or they would cross from the parking lot on the other side and then find themselves basically in the middle of the woods. So you might want to either look at the location of the footbridge that was pointed to, or possibly connecting it to the existing stairs that are there. I don't know if that's been considered, but I just wanted to point that out, just so we don't end up with another ADA footbridge situation. The second thing was the speed of the current where you were putting the boat launch or dock. If you put it in the narrowest part of the river, that might be an issue. So you might want to just double check with that. I'm sure engineers will already do that. I just figured I would say it for the record. And then my question was, this is the phase 1 changes. Now, one of the reasons I'm so attentive to the park's name is because I'm in the middle of looking at redoing a mural I did like 6 years ago on the wall there. And one of the concerns obviously is like, if we put a mural there, is it going to get filled in or turned into a road or anything like that? And my projection is not this year, not next year, maybe not for several years. So can you confirm that? Or do you actually foresee us like doing the landscaping and development projects associated with Le Parc de Notre Renaissance Français anytime soon?
So I will start with the last question or the last point and work backwards. I am really trying to work hard to get this under construction sometime next year, which Parc de la Renaissance would be part of the project. That would be sometime in calendar year 22. If everything goes according to plan, we still would need to receive all our permits. We still have to go through final design. We still have to make sure we're within budget and we get it, and get out to contracting. That's a lot to do between.
Just to be
It's
clear,
a lot to do between.
that would include the rearranging of the road there too? Because based on some of the earlier designs, Water Street was going to become the only street in that area. The other street that goes underneath it and connects to the back of Clock Tower was going to disappear. And then there was going to be a lot of fill. and there may or may not have had, we may or may not have had to replace parts of the overpass. Is that the part that you were saying we may be able to do by next year?
Yeah, so not all of that is going to be done. I think what you're really going to see is just Water Street be one way and parking added to it and some improvements along Water Street. The underneath part that you're referring to is not part of the project. That was eliminated a couple phases ago. Really,
Is
all
the
that can
road
be
that goes
accommodated
underneath going to
is-
be continued?
Yeah, that's still all going to be left there.
Okay. Then I guess for the purposes of my project,
Um,
I usually do stuff for 2 to 3 years at most, so it's not going to matter. I mean, 2 years from now, you can dump all the dirt in front of it you want.
Okay, well, I mean, so I think so we're within a 2-year kind of time horizon.
Okay, just making sure.
And then the other question about, we are absolutely trying to align the new pedestrian bridge with the stairs as much as possible that come down from the library parking lot. That is a thought process that is currently very much being studied by the engineering team. And I don't think a final decision has been made where exactly it's going to land, because they have to be very sensitive to the grades on either side of the river to make it fit appropriately. And we do it within budget. And
There's
so
like a
that's
30-foot difference there. That's why it should be interesting, because if it goes off of the
That's-
parking lot, that's the extension, the satellite parking lot to the library, then it's going to pass like right over everything. So that should be a very interesting thing to see them solve.
So, and then lastly, the engineers have already studied and looked at the floating dock and whether the river currents would be too strong to accommodate putting in a kayak, because that was something that was raised by H.L. Turner, one of our engineers on the project, and it was studied extensively because, as we all noted, we wouldn't want to put a dock in that was not usable. And the last thing we would want to do is put a kayak launch in that then the kayak would float away before someone could actually use it. And wherever the dock lands, that will be a priority, so it doesn't cause an issue and also a safety concern. So that is very much in the engineers' minds and has been discussed.
Okay, glad to hear it. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Alderman Jettie?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So talking about the dock for kayaks, when you first talked about the changing it from the north bank to the south bank, I thought, well, that would be good because there's very little parking on the north bank for people to park and then bring their kayaks down to the water. And I thought, well, on the south bank, there's a lot of parking there. But then you told me you're going to eliminate the parking in the on the level of nearest the river in the parc de Notre Renaissance Française. So if the parking is going to be up on Water Street, it's going to make it difficult for people to transport kayaks down to the dock. So I'm thinking that maybe it's not worth the trouble to put a dock in there. Maybe we ought to use the one that's further up river. That the Spilios family made available to us. So I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
I think it's a fair point. I mean, and ultimately, if it's the pleasure of this group and others to remove the floating dock as an element, that, that's absolutely an area that we could save some money. And, I think continue to meet the spirit of the project. I think the idea is more than just being a kayak launch. What we heard was people wanted to be really connecting to the river in some way. This would be one of the few places that you could actually bring people down to the water. And the floating dock would be big enough for people to use for various things besides just the idea of launching a kayak. You know, one of the things we want to make sure is the space is big enough so people can sit on it, have lunch, you know, sunbathe. You know, these are the certain elements that we kind of want to bring forward that would create a sense of place. You know, that's part of what we're trying to do here. And the dock providing the main purpose, the primary purpose of being a place for people to launch their various aquatic vehicles into the water, you know, is absolutely the primary thought. But we wanted to also have some of those other elements kind of intertwined as we're trying to create a sense of place, a destination where people want to go. Where it ultimately lands, you know, it's somewhere in the area that I discussed. I agree with you. We want to make sure people have parking and access to parking because you're not going to want to carry your kayak too far. And you know, I think we understand that. We want to make sure that we're planning and providing for that. But as well as, and I'm just kind of talking out loud here, there may be a time someday when, you know, we're going to want to have space for kayak storage, and we need to make sure that we're thinking in those terms as well. So we're thinking of places where, you know, people can run a little kayak kiosk, if you will. And so we have all these thoughts in our mind, and we're trying to balance them with all the other variables and move this project forward.
But if I could follow up,
Absolutely.
you know, on the kayak kiosk thing, you probably know better than I do, but you know, last summer, you know, somebody was operating a kayak rental business, and they had the kayaks over at the parking lot behind 60 Main Street. I'm assuming they made an arrangement with the owner of that property, and so people would go there and you know, rent the kayak, and then they would get over to either by car or by walking over to the north bank of the river, over by the house on Front Street there,
Really?
the Greeley house. And I don't know how that worked out. I know when we put in the granite stairs leading down to the water, they were, you know, we tried to get more parking there, and there was I remember that, you know, there being resistance from the owner of Lofts 37 because they needed parking for their tenants. So I don't know how that all worked out this summer for that kiosk business, but you know, it sounds like you're thinking about, you know, if the primary purpose is kayaks, you know, you acknowledge that you need a place, you know, parking place and storage place close enough to wherever the dock is going to be. If it's going to be just a place for people to sit, then, you know, you know, parking, I guess, can be more remote, like on the South Bank. If the parking were up on Water Street, you know, if people are just walking down there, it's, you know, that's certainly more doable than trying to get a kayak down to the water. But it sounds like you're thinking about all those things, and thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members of the committee? Okay, seeing none. Director Cummings, you are always welcome at the infrastructure meeting for your presentations. We find them extremely informative, and we're very fortunate to have on this committee the chairman of the other committee, Alderman Dave Tenza. So perhaps if you see in the future, we've had combined the two committees together and stuff like that to work towards this worthwhile project. But if I can plant another seed on your ideas and conceptually. I bet you probably haven't figured this out. You may or may not know, but the Pan Am Bridge that you're calling it, the former railroad bridge, does have historical significance in the city of Nashua. It is ground zero of the Great Conflagration in the 1930s. So if it does get moved, um, any geographical references of that tragedy that occurred on that May afternoon, perhaps maybe a little bit of a plaque or something like that, because many citizens in the Crown Hill area, there's still people around that do remember that tragic day. So it would be nice to commemorate that if there's enough in the budget, so.
Understood. Thank you.
Hey, again, anything else? Alderman Jettie, your hands up, but did you take it down? You're all set?
Sorry, just forgot to take it down.
That's quite all right. Very good. Just want to make sure. All right, Director Cummings, thank you so much. You're welcome to stay with us if you so wish. But we're going to move on to communications.
There are none.
Unfinished business
Also none.
and new business resolutions.
We have Resolution 21-121, changing the name of Veterans Drive to Armory Drive and changing the name of Broad Street Parkway to Veterans Parkway. Mr. Chair, I would recommend final passage.
Well, if you could hold off on your motion, I was going to ask you, since we have read it by title, I would like at this particular time just to open it up for a brief discussion. And let me set the tone of the discussion. We are allowed, to make changes by current state RSAs, particularly mentioned 231 semicolon 133 Roman numeral 1 and RSA 231 semicolon 131 Roman numeral 2. But again, those changes are allowed because the state does realize some of these streets were laid down about 350 years ago. But however, we do have enhanced 911 system in this community. There are cars now. You're probably familiar with the Cadillac with, I think it's N-Star or something like that. You get in an accident and it automatically calls from where your location is. And that is under RSA 106-H semicolon Roman numeral number 1. So what seems to be the issue here, and I signed on as a sponsor, as well as 12 of my aldermanic brethren and the mayor, which makes 13. It is popular to rename Veterans Drive. However, with the 911 issue at hand, you've got to remember, we already have a Veterans Bridge. It's adjacent to the Taylor's Falls Bridge. And if you don't savvy to where they are, they're at the, from Bridge Street going over to Hudson. There is also a Veterans Drive, but there isn't a hand-in-hand ordinance with that to change that to Armory Street. However, the city has, and that's the one that's before us, the city does have Amory Street. And I'm not fooling you on your ears. Amory sounds like Armory or Armory sounds like Amory. And when you get the high quality, high definition speakers that we have in the fire stations with the bells going off, the truck starting and everything else, it's sometimes difficult. The other day I did listen to a call and there was a minor confusion of Lovewell and Lavelle Street. And in this city, we have a lot of it. We have Russell Street, Russell Ave, Williams Court, Williams Street, Coburn Ave, Coburn Street, Saturn and Satin are two of my favorite. And there's a whole host of others. So taking that in mind, it does create a little bit of a flux. So there is a willingness and I had consultations today with pretty much a lot of the stakeholders. And the stakeholders, I'm talking the mayor's office, uh, Public Works Director Lisa Photo, conversations with the fire chief, Chief Rhodes, and Assistant Chief Buxton, and also the police department. So what I would like to do is to direct this into a committee with those three groups: Public Works, the fire department, and the police department, to discuss the issues with the enhanced 911 system and see if they could come up with a viable solution. So at this time, probably to rehash, if I didn't cover it all on what I said, I would like to recognize Assistant Chief Buxton to explain some of the concerns. But I want to share, when we do this, I will make the motion to bring this back. Yeah, it will be temporarily tabled, but the motion will be tabled to be brought back to the April infrastructure meeting to be read on the main agenda. And at that particular time, I would expect the report back from those particular principles. So without further ado, Chief Buxton, would you like to jump in on and brief us on some of those concerns?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steve Buxton, Assistant Chief National Fire. So Alderman O'Brien pretty much covered it. He hasn't lost much off his fastball since he left the department there a few days ago. He still recognizes all the conflicts we have. We have a list of about 40 groups of names that are like sounding in the world of E911. And I say groups of names, that could be 2 streets that sound alike, as many, there's also groups that have 4 to 6 streets that sound alike. It does create confusion. Our members are very good at learning their districts. We have computers and everything to assist us. However, the problem also translates to the other end of the phone when the call is being reported and somebody has a translation issue, or they're not pronouncing the name appropriately for the E911 operator when they translate the call down to Nashua. Alderman O'Brien already cited all the RSAs where the authority lies. It is with the municipality. Under a normal process in planning, when a new street comes in to the city, the fire marshal's office is charged with naming the street and numbering it. And usually the Board of Aldermen needs to get involved if there's some level of conflict somewhere along the way. Making a change to a major roadway like this within the city, very well intentioned, big supporter of the cause. We just have a few loose ends that we need to tie up to get it done appropriately to avoid any further conflicts. So I think that pretty much summarizes our concerns. We're willing to work with whoever to get this done appropriately, but we'd like to avoid adding any more names to the list of conflicts that we currently already have.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Chief Buxton. With that goal in mind, does anybody have any other questions to Chief Buxton? Yes, Alderman Lopez.
Not so much a question, but just an observation that this did seem like an issue when it was presented to me initially. And I mean, I'm happy to do it right and make sure there's no controversy surrounding us naming something after veterans and that type of thing. So sometimes it's better to put a little more work into planning.
Well stated, Alderman. I think looking at the 12 aldermen that are co-sponsoring this, the other 11 as well as you, Alderman Lopez, including myself, we do want to do something. It's a very good program. It's nice to see the banners that are up on the Parkway, and this would definitely enhance, but again, we would like to do it right. So I think there is time, and like I say, it does seem to have the blessing with all the principals, so if we could defer to that. But again, I'll open it up to any other comment by any other alderman.
Alderman O'Brien?
Yes, Alderman Karen, please.
Yes. Thank you, Alderman O'Brien. And I'm a little confused because when I was asked to co-sponsor this with Alderman Lopez, my understanding was that they were going to take care of this issue about street changes and making sure that we didn't conflict with anything else, because we had this before and they always did that ahead of time. So I'm a little confused that this hadn't been done before it was presented to your committee, and I apologize that, you know, you have to put it on hold for a month, and I don't have a problem with that. I think it's very important that this is done and done right, so that especially the police and fire who have to go to these emergencies know where they're going and they're going in the right direction. So I certainly will be sponsoring the new legislation if we have to do it, because I think it's important that we recognize our veterans in a better way than we've had, and the Parkway seemed like the right choice. So thank you for doing that, and I certainly will attend the meeting in April. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Karen, and no apologies are needed. As a matter of fact, this is what the people expect us to do. The system is working. Went to the, infrastructure. I did inquire with the other principals, and this was discovered. And not one person can think of everything, and this is why we have the committee. So no apologies needed. It's part of the business, and hopefully we can make this better, more appropriate. Alderman Lopez.
So knowing that probably Armory Street and Amory Street are very close sounding, and that we may have to look at the name of the Veterans Bridge, and we'd have to talk to Hudson about that. I just want to float the name for Veterans Bridge that went into Hudson as somebody left a Veo bike sitting on top of a column in the middle of the bridge, Memorial Bridge. It's long, but you definitely know it if it was being called for 911. That's a suggestion. You guys can do with it what you want.
I'm sure Chief Buxton will bring it back to the Blue Ribbon Committee. Absolutely. Alderman Jettie.
Yeah, I think your idea is excellent, Mr. Chairman. But I can't help but think that don't we already have a street naming numbering committee? I think the planning department has a representative on that. Would you consider adding someone from the planning department to this committee if you think it would be a good idea?
It's not that I don't think it's a bad idea, but the planning department, it seems to be the issue. I think Boston has several Washington streets in the example. Which one you're talking about? That's a good question, unless you know particularly what neighborhood you're from. But the thing is, I don't really see this the particular problem as a planning issue as much as a 911 issue. So that's why I did not. But if this committee so chooses, I can charge and say to this particular committee that they are entitled to exercise any resources available to come back to this committee with the proper answer. So they could probably seek advice from the planning committee, and if needed, and I would encourage that.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. All right. Any other comment? Okay. Seeing that, I would like to make the motion to table R-21-121 to the first, to the order of business of the April Infrastructure Committee meeting, pending the report of a committee to research the street namings, and the committee to include Public Works, Director Photo or her designee, the Fire Department, Fire Chief Ryan Rhodes or his designees, and the Police Department, Chief Michael Carignan or his designees, and with that report to report back to the Infrastructure Committee by the April meeting. How's that sound? And also to additional charge that the committee will appoint somebody to lead the committee and if need be, to seek other resources to come to a conclusion with an answer to the Infrastructure Committee. Okay, everybody got all that? Okay, it's a mouthful. All right. So if we understand it, any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt says yes, Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman Tenza,
Yes.
5 yeas and 0 nays. Motion carries.
Thank you. Without exception, if I may, I would like to, at this time, go out of order on the agenda and bring up a germane ordinance that is O-21-056. Amendments to the ordinances relative to the street name changes of Veterans Drive and the Broad Street Parkway. And if you can allow me to speak to this motion, again, I would like to have it tabled, basically to send it to the committee of the exactly with the Public Works, with Director Photo or her designee, Fire Chief Brian Rose or his designee, and the Police Department, Chief Corrigan and his designee, to report back to the Infrastructure Committee so it could be discussed at the April infrastructure meeting. And if the committee needs any further resources from the city, to so seek it, to bring back the proper information to the committee. Can I have, let me see, any discussion on that particular motion? Okay, seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Sure.
Alderman Alderman Schmidt says yes, Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
and Alderman Tenza,
Yes.
all 5 yeas.
Right, very good. And I thank everybody for their patience with this. It's something I would like to see done. I'm going to take a little break, take a sip of water. Thank you, guys. All right, new business ordinances.
We have ordinance 20-053, authorizing a stop sign on Shawnee Drive at its intersection with Conant Road. Mr. Chairman, I recommend final passage.
Thank you. And Alderman Jettie, I'll recognize you as the prime sponsor, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this came about because I was approached by Lauren Byers from the Department of Public Works, who reported to me that one of our residents had a near accident at the intersection of Conant Road and Shawnee. Drive. I forgot the suffix. Shawnee Drive, and was surprised to realize that there's no stop sign at Shawnee Drive as it intersects with Conant Road. So he complained to the Department of Public Works, and according to Ms. Byers, the Department of Public Works went out and looked at it. I don't know if Mr. Hudson has any information about that, but it was reported to me that the Department of Public Works agreed that a stop sign was appropriate at that intersection. On the opposite side of the intersection, there's a condominium complex, Wynwood Place, I think it's called.
Yes.
Burgundy Drive is one of the roads, and I think the part that comes out of that condominium is officially called Shawnee Drive still, and there's a stop sign on that side of Conant Road. So this would merely put a stop sign on Shawnee and where it matches, the opposite side of the road. So after being told all of that, I was asked whether I would sponsor this, and I agreed. And so if Mr. Hudson has anything to add, I would ask that he be recognized.
Thank you, Alderman Jettie. Mr. Hudson, please, city engineer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I can just confirm the chain of events as described by Alderman Jettie. Our senior traffic engineer, Wayne Husband, did go out and review the area. What was described is correct. There's a stop sign on one side of the intersection, not the other. We went back and looked at historic street view imagery and whatnot, and it doesn't appear there ever was one there, but that doesn't mean it's not a good idea. So we support the request, and feel will help address the concerns noted by the resident that voiced the complaint.
Very good. Any questions by members of the committee? Alderman Lopez.
Yes, just because it seems to be a trend. Have you already put the stop sign there?
I can't confirm that. I know in some cases
Okay.
we put it up on a temporary basis, right? And
Every
then
time.
once it gets approved, then we put it up finally. But I don't know the status of that. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Seeing no other further questions by members of the committee, am I correct? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt says yes, Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
and Alderman Tensa.
Yes.
All five.
Motion carries. Clerk, introduce the next bill, please.
Ordinance 21-054, no parking on Concord Street from Mount Pleasant Street North for a distance of 50 feet. Mr. Chairman, I recommend final passage.
Thank you, Alderman Schmidt. Alderman Clay, I recognize you as one of the prime sponsors. Would you like to discuss it?
Yes, I would, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate this being heard. I have a couple of constituents who live on Mount Pleasant, and Mount Pleasant is a one-way that goes from Manchester Street to Concord Street. That portion is one way. And those that live towards the end, towards the Concord Street, that is their only exit from their property. They have to go out to Concord Street. And the problem is when you get out there, in order to take a left, and cars are parked there, you can't be seen. And as cautiously as you try to get out there, you just can't. This wasn't a problem until some recent changes in occupancy of certain buildings within that area. So there's more parking that's being used over and over again. And while I hate to give up any kind of parking, it is becoming quite dangerous. I had worked with the director of parking, Jill Stansfield. We coordinated with Lauren Byers and so on. And I believe Dan Hudson also went out there and looked at it, and it is a hazard. And to preempt Alderman Lopez's question, we do have temporary signs out there that are eliminating the parking, which has helped. I'll be honest, there's still some issues with people that are going so fast on Concord Street, you still have to eke out there, but it's making it a little bit easier. The true problem is the speeding on Concord Street. I don't know how to stop that short of standing in the middle of the street, kind of waving my hands, telling people to slow down. But it doesn't help when you can't see, when you're trying to pull out to Concord Street to either take a left or a right, to be honest with you. It's quite dangerous. And I think this is much needed, and I'll let Mr. Hudson speak now. Thank you.
Very good. Before I recognize Mr. Hudson, Alderman Dowd, you are co-sponsoring this. Are you content, or would you like to say anything?
Just a second.
I'm with you.
No, I agree. I think that that whole intersection is over the years has got even more dangerous, and the only way we can, I don't know how you slow traffic down. You could put a sign up says 15 miles an hour and it'd still be doing 50 going down that street. So I think that the only thing we can do at the moment is increase the visibility before we have a horrific accident.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Dowd. I'll recognize Dan Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, yeah, we in engineering concur with the concerns noted. Restricting the parking as requested for a certain distance will improve visibility. Senior traffic engineer Wayne Husband also reviewed this one, came to that conclusion, so we support this request.
Very good. Any other? Oh, Alderman Clay.
Thank you. Just to kind of add the next ordinance that you will probably be looking at as well is going to tie in slightly to this. It's kind of in the same general area. So as I said, speeding is a real issue through that area. And other than, as I said, standing in the middle of the street, I don't know how to slow it down. Thank you.
Yeah, and I do not recommend you getting out there with a lime green vest. You know, thank you. You're doing a brilliant job with this right now. So I think this should work. All right, thank you so much. Any other comment from any other alderman? Seeing none, will the chair, excuse me, will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt says yes, Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman Tensa,
Yes.
that's all 5.
And the motion carries. Will the clerk read the next ordinance, please?
Ordinance 21-055, authorizing stop signs at the connector at its intersections with Concord and Manchester Streets. And Mr. Chairman, I recommend final passage.
Very good, thank you. And Alderman Clay, I'll recognize you as the prime sponsor.
Thank you very much. This, much like what Alderman Jettie had spoken to, was actually brought to me by Ms. Byers from Public Works. And the moment she started speaking of it, I went, oh yes, I absolutely agree. This is right over by the Fireman's Memorial. It's that little tiny road that connects Manchester Street and Concord Street. And the problem is that I can tell you from coming from downtown late at night after a Board of Aldermen meeting, you're driving and as slow as you're going, people are just pulling out in front of you. It's bad enough with cars, but pedestrians are at a good risk there as well. I'm trying to cross those streets and so on without these stop signs there. You would just think it would be an automatic inclination that you would stop and go, but without the stop sign there, it really is causing a problem. So I think the stop sign, if nothing else, is more just to tell people literally to stop, to look, and to make sure it's safe before you go. And I think it's as important for the safety of traffic as it is for the pedestrians that are within that area, because you really can't see as well as you do. And getting right back to what I'm saying, both Manchester and Concord, they're just going way too fast. The speed limit is 25. And as I had one of the neighbors say, if people only went 35, they'd be happy. They're just going way too fast with them. They're considering that there's schools in that area. It's sad. It's sad that people aren't doing the speed limit. And again, I think Mr. Hudson can possibly add to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Clay. And before Alderman Dowd, do you agree or do you have additional comment?
No, I agree. That whole intersection area at that point is again become more dangerous because of the speeding. And while we don't normally use stop signs to control speeding, that's not the case here. It's to prevent somebody rolling through the intersection into speeding traffic. And again, there are children walking around there during school hours, and it could be very dangerous.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Lopez, do you mind at this particular time? I'll put you in the queue, but I think I'll give the opportunity to City Engineer Hudson to
Sure.
express his points of view, and then I'll call you next, if that's okay with you, sir.
Sure.
Thank you, Alderman. I recognize Engineer Hudson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have a lot to add other than, you know, there is a stop sign, I think already on the, next to Concord Street, but there wasn't one on the other end of the connector where there should be, to kind of reinforce what people should understand is the traffic pattern, but will be better reinforced with an actual sign. So, so yeah, again, we believe this will help clarify patterns in the area and thereby improve safety of the area.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Alderman Lopez.
Just a request for Mr. Hudson and maybe Alderman Clee to take a look at that intersection too. If I remember right, there's crosswalks on the Concord Street side, but I vaguely remember being like trapped on the Manchester Street side and not being sure how to cross over to that. So just looking at the pedestrian access to that might be a good idea too.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, excuse me, Engineer Hudson, do you want to reply, or you're all set?
Just, yeah, I'll just confirm that we will look at that. We have some projects in and around this area planned in the future, so it's something that we can certainly look into.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Alderman Clay.
Thank you. Those are very valid points, Alderman Lopez, and I absolutely agree with you that Mount Pleasant School is right there. And the truth is there should be crosswalks that go from the memorial across to the point of the property there. And as well, if you go further up, there's a crosswalk to the school, but there really definitely needs to be one there and then over by French Street possibly. Because that's where the kids are crossing. They're not always going, and I've watched them, they're not always going to in front of the school and then crossing over there. So there should be two really strong crosswalks, one that goes from the memorial to the point there, as well as the one that goes over towards where French Street is. I think those are very important things. And I think Alderman Dowd has a comment too.
Yes, Alderman Dowd.
Yeah, just refresh my memory, Alderman Clee through the chair. I know that going from the area of Homan Stadium down Mount Pleasant to Concord Street, or there's a speed indicator that's school or flashing light, one of the two. Is there one going the other direction? Like near the Fireman's Memorial?
There, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely, please.
Thank you. There is no speed indicators on Concord Street. There are speed indicators on Manchester Street, both heading, and pardon me, I'm very directionally challenged, but heading from Henry Burke to the downtown area. There are two towards the schools. There's one towards right before St. Chris. Well, obviously there's one that's over by the temporary one there, but there's one by St. Chris and there's one just before Mount Pleasant going in that one single direction. There's none going in the opposite direction. So they're going from towards the downtown area, the two that are permanent, that are going in that direction. And they're both based by the schools, by St. Chris's and by Mount Pleasant. Technically, on kind of almost your side of the street, so to speak. One is on your side of the street, the other one I own that one. So
Yeah.
That's why I'm calling on to both of you, even Stevens.
we fight territory all the time.
Yeah. It's just that the traffic coming up from Main Street that go by the Fireman's Memorial. If you're from out of town, or if you're not familiar, there's a school there. I hesitate to say there isn't anything there, but if there isn't, there should be. Because the cars are going too fast. You know, and they should have some warning that there's a school there.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes, absolutely, please.
I will be honest with you, I'm a little sign blind by this point because I drive through there all the time. I do not know if there, I will assume, but I will not state emphatically that there is a sign that says school crossing or school ahead. And we probably could use one if there isn't one there and there's no overgrowth or anything like that. It's very important. I'm just not, I don't know what the rules are as to how close to the school we would put those signs up. So that would probably be an issue, but I think it is worth looking into, Mr. Hudson, if we can also look into the signage around that school, that would be really important. Problem is people are coming up the hill and they're blinded. They're blinded by French Street. They're blinded by that little connector. There's a couple of businesses off to the left-hand side when you're coming from that are also trying to enter the traffic. So people are all going every which direction into that intersection and it becomes a little bit of a craziness. There's no real lights. There is lights on the Concord side that warn people that there's a crosswalk there, but on the Manchester Street side where the school is, there isn't. Thank you.
Okay. I do have one point, and it is being a stakeholder, being a former firefighter. I would make the recommendation to City Engineer Hudson to contact the Nashua Firemen's Relief Association. That is that's their monument, that's their spit of land. And they haven't expressed any objections to this committee, but I would say to be nice, and they would probably appreciate, knowledge of what is going on with this. So as a courtesy, I think that would be good. Any other comments from any members of the committee? Okay, seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt votes yes, Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
and Alderman Tenza.
Yes.
All five of us, sir.
Motion carries. As we remember, we tabled 021-056, so that clears us. There's items that have been tabled, but nobody has brought forward to remove them from the table. So the next item is general discussion. And I first would like to lead off. I would like to thank the members of this committee. It is something delicate for your cooperation. I very much appreciate it. With the Broad Street project, I think I'm holding good expectations to come from friends in the Public Works, the fire and police to come back with a recommendation to this committee. And I'm sure Chief Buxton, you can hear my words, to have some prep report would be our expectation from this committee by the April meeting, which is generally around the 20th, end of the month, So I could work with you on that particular date, but I thank everybody all involved for the cooperation on that matter. Was anybody else have an item for general discussion? Alderman Lopez.
Speaking of cooperation and those things that are tabled, the parking study has proceeded. We had a second town hall for Ward 3, a second one for Ward 4. I think Ward 7 got a second slice too. And they said in at least the Ward 4 one that this definitely seemed to be a neighborhood issue. Like some specific areas need it, not the whole city. So when those recommendations come forward, I hope this committee is looking forward to working on those issues in the manner that they suggest them. One of the suggestions that they made was maybe having neighbors in a specific region request, like a regional type of parking. So if such a plan were to be suggested by the parking study, I can guarantee that at least over by the number of streets, they would immediately provide that list. So while the items are tabled at the moment, we might have to come back and revisit those because the issues are still happening. If anything, I'm hearing more and more, like now Clock Tower is saying they don't have enough residents, not the entity, residents are saying they don't have enough parking either. So it's getting pretty jam-packed. And I think there's definitely validity in saying, let's have an intelligent approach to it. But when the time comes and we do have that suggestion, we do need to take action.
Yes, thank you, Alderman Lopez, and I'm in total agreement with you. But at this time, I would like to, if he so wishes, Director Cummings, could you please give us an update and tell us what we're doing with the parking study, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, happy to do that. But before I do, I just wanted to let you know, I don't know if you saw, but Alderman Dowd wanted to make a comment. So I don't know if I should wait until after he speaks but happy to give you an update.
No, go ahead, Director Cummings. I can do it after you.
Blessings of the
Okay.
chair. Go
Great.
ahead.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development. I actually stuck around because I thought maybe this group would appreciate an update on the parking study, as well as maybe the barriers, and happy to get into that maybe in a little bit later on. But relative to the parking study, we have essentially concluded the public outreach phase of the project. We did, after doing our initial intake, decide to go back to a couple of the wards to further seek input and, additionally try to discern more information from those particular wards that the consultant felt it was prudent to get more feedback. That has now all occurred. I actually had a meeting earlier this week with him. He is in the drafting stages of the report. We sketched out a general timeline where I believe this committee could see a report sometime either at the next meeting at the end of April or thereabouts soon after, if it doesn't get in for the April infrastructure committee meeting. There's going to be another internal meeting with city departments that still needs to occur per the scope that was agreed to when we first started this project. We'll be looking to have that meeting sometime in the next 2 weeks or so, and then ultimately try to get the report out to the Board of Aldermen. And just as a reminder, when the report comes out, we will give you a presentation. But then it will be concluded, and then ultimately, we would be looking for direction in terms of whether any legislation gets filed or not. So that would be the next phase that would need to occur, depending on the pleasure of this body.
Very good. Thank you, Director Cummings. Alderman Dowd.
Yes, Director Hudson, I just wondered if you saw my note about the letter.
I'm sorry, I did not.
The letter relative to the signage at exit 5.
Recent, as of today, I do owe you a response.
Okay.
I'll send you an email first thing in the morning.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, at this time, before I see if anybody else has a comment, thank you, Director Cummings, for volunteering if to wish to give us possibly an update on the barriers, if you so please.
Yes, happy to, Mr. Chairman. Again, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development. So we have 2 artist groups looking to work on the barriers. In terms of putting art up, we anticipate they're working on it starting on the 29th. My understanding is the barriers will be dropped on Main Street on the 29th. And then over the next week to 2 weeks, depending on how the painting goes, the barriers will then be pushed out into their permanent locations, all happening and occurring prior to April 15th, which is when the barriers will be fully implemented into narrowing of Main Street. The 2 artist groups, Positive Street Art and Beyond Walls, are the 2 groups that have been selected to paint their art on the barriers. I think that's a good, quick, very high level overview on essentially where we are at this time.
Okay. I do have one, Director Cummings, if I may. Have you been in communications with traffic and looking at the infrastructure to light enhancement to, I know last year towards the end when people got used to the barriers, wasn't as much as an issue, but I think it's the prior learning curve and could maybe even to Engineer Hudson, would traffic be interested, perhaps maybe putting up on the mast arms, reminder not to block intersections. So, if you can't get out there, I know it's a state RSA, but however, Murphy's Law, I understand it does happen. So your thoughts, Director Cummings?
Sure. So my understanding is it is now part of the engineering, team's program to try to add some cameras and to try to improve the flow with the traffic signals using this type of technology. I think it's going to come about over time. My understanding, and City Engineer Hudson's on the call, so I'm here tonight, so I'm sure he can speak to it in more detail than I could. But there are going to be locations, intersections where these cameras will be added. I think specifically Pearl Street will have a camera put on it at some point in the near future. I'm aware of that only because of the Performing Arts Center project and it's being contemplated and how we can do it to improve the Main Street as well as try to include it in the scope of that project. So to answer your question, yes, it is very much part of the conversation and the thought process moving forward.
Mm-hmm. I do see the wish to comment by other aldermen, but while the topic is fresh, I'll give the opportunity to the Engineer Hudson. Would you want to make a comment?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yeah, we are looking to make improvements, as Director Cummings noted, trying to put some camera vehicle detection systems up, which do a better job than the older technology of the loop detectors, which are embedded in the pavement, especially for making pattern configuration changes at different times of year, dropping lanes and shifting traffic around, whatever. All those things can be easily accommodated in those camera type systems. You just draw a new detection zone on the screen and that's where it detects the vehicle. So we are looking at those technologies. We'll see how it goes this year. I mean, there is only so much capacity provided, in a single lane in each direction on Main Street. Some people will divert to other routes to avoid congestion, but there is only so much capacity given a certain configuration. And what we'll do the best job we can of is trying to allocate that time between different approaches to try to maximize the throughput that we do have under that configuration. The signage is do not block intersection signs. I'll make a note of that. We'll see if that's anything that can be accommodated.
Just an idea,
Yeah, no, it's we hadn't considered any type of signage, but that is when you have problems, when people sit in the middle of an intersection on the wrong phase. So clearly we want to discourage that.
Mm-hmm. All right, in the queue, I have Alderman Jettie, Alderman Schmidt, and Alderman Lopez. So in that order, Alderman Jettie.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Director Cummings, I noticed that the barriers were placed in front of Peddler's Daughter, before St. Patrick's Day. How did that get done? Was that, was the city able to do that because of it's just a limited number? So it wasn't the contractor that we're hiring. Was the city able to do that?
Correct.
Okay. And we amended the ordinance to allow the mayor and you and the city engineer to make adjustments. And I know that after the barriers went up before St. Patrick's Day, there were some people complain to me about the bottleneck that's created when the traffic, with the barriers in front of Peddler's Daughter, it reduces the traffic down to one lane northbound across the bridge and onto and it doesn't open up again until you get past the railroad tracks. I don't know what the status of indoor dining is right now. But when I think indoor dining is allowed to some degree now, and probably will be allowed more so, as time goes on. Would it be possible to reduce the lanes and the lanes that are being allowed for dining in front of peddlers? Right now, you've got the parking lane and a travel lane, I think, that they're using for dining. When indoor dining opens up, would it be possible to open up another travel lane, to reduce their dining lane just to the parking lane, so that you could have two travel lanes going across the bridge to relieve that bottleneck? Is that a possibility?
It's definitely something that we can take into consideration. Thank you. Thank you for the comment.
Okay, thank you.
I'll mute myself. There we go. Right now, we have Alderman Schmidt, Lopez, and Clay. So therefore, in that order, Alderman Schmidt.
Thank you. I've been watching a little bit on Facebook about people complaining about getting ready to complain about what's going to happen downtown with barriers. And one thing that they're saying is that they're finding it very difficult to get across Main Street, that the lights take much longer while you're waiting to cross Main Street. And during a study that I was working on for traffic calming and road diets, they said that to decrease that Main Street activity, try to increase the cross traffic. It would take the strain off Main, and people will get it. They'll understand that they can't drive, 50 miles an hour down Main Street, but there are other paths that are faster. So you might want to consider, when you're changing the traffic lights, to give the cross streets a little more time. And it's just a thought, but I thought it would be interesting to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alderwoman Schmidt. Yes, I think that is that's definitely something that we should look at as well. It's a known technique that I'm aware of that has a calming effect that you're speaking about.
Okay. Thank you, Alderman Schmidt. Alderman Lopez.
So with regards to what the previous alderman said, that was the idea behind the big one-way rotation thing that we were trying to do with the street reversals and whatever, but that was a complicated project. And I think traffic is going to be difficult just because of the construction that we have going on, not just the Performing Arts Center, but on School Street and in other areas of the city. Including possibly the Indian Head Bank. So it's just something we're going to have to be conscious of as it all unfolds. Personally, Director Cummings, I just want to make sure you've thought about the possibility of having these art groups perhaps paint something in the intersection, such as a giant pit or pond full of sharks, that makes a car a little less eager to cross it. Floating that idea. And then more seriously, on West Pearl, over by Codex and the new Mexican place that just opened up, are they going to be looking for outdoor dining? Because those sidewalks are actually particularly skinny on that side of the street. Have you talked to them about it at all? Is there any feasibility? That's a really tricky intersection.
Yes, Alderman Lopez, that's a really tricky intersection. If we were to do anything along that area, it would be across the street from Codex. There's nothing planned at this time. In previous conversations, there has not been an interest. Though I should note that I should follow up with Codex and the brand new Mexican restaurant that just opened. I haven't had a recent conversation with them like I have with others, But I can say that in previous conversation, there wasn't the desire at that time, at least.
Well, Codex, of
Um,
course, is
you
not
got-
on West Pearl. That's a bookstore, not Codex.
Right,
That's a different.
right.
But the Mexican place might be interesting.
Yes. Yeah, but to your point, the site distances along that area is a very tricky area to try to navigate, and so we would have to be very cautious in anything that we did.
They do have a
There
super
wi-
narrow like alleyway, and I don't know if there's parking back there, but for some of those places where they can't do on street, has anybody been looking at maybe expanding their permissions for the back area, putting part dining behind them?
Yep. Yes, Alderman Lopez. It is tricky with some of our other codes. We have health sanitation codes and ADA codes that we have to make sure we're adhering to. So doing something sometimes in the rear and not in the front becomes problematic. So it's really on a case-by-case basis whether it works. But I do know some of the food establishments are looking at doing something like that.
Okay. I hear a lot from the restaurants that are active downtown. So I just wanted to let people know that might be watching this or might be feeling like all we do is block off Main Street, that there's a whole like ecosystem going on in Main Street and the surrounding communities. And we do look at the other areas as well. And it's not just a highway. It's not just Daniel Webster Highway. It's a whole downtown neighborhood. And we might have kind of gotten away from that with the 4 lanes of people trying to go home from work or get to work, but it's active the rest of the day too. So it's worth considering.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Lopez. Oh, yes, do you want to reply, Director Cummings?
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just one final comment on the barriers in terms of just trying to lay out next steps about the overall vision for Main Street. And what I think is going to be really crucial is sometime over the next, I would say over the next 6-10 weeks or so, sometime this spring, maybe late spring though, this group and the Board of Aldermen together comes together and has a discussion about what the vision is for Main Street for the coming years and what the future is. I want to make sure we're following the direction and the vision that has been espoused. I can tell you that last year there seemed to be a very strong sentiment that we wanted as a community to continue doing this for future years. We're trying to do that. There seems to be an undercurrent, though, that when dining gets back open for complete 100% indoor, maybe we won't need to do this in the future. And that's fine. And if that's what is decided upon, but it's more than just the outdoor dining. It was the idea of changing Main Street. And that's a cultural issue in terms of making sure, we have the norms in place and the values that gets, the type of Main Street that this community wants. And I think we should revisit that conversation, make sure we're all in agreement because, I know that, Engineer Hudson and we're going to need to start planning for future years very quickly, actually. And also, we don't want to keep redesigning Main Street every season either. So we're going to need to, get some sort of plan if we're going to continue doing this in terms of what I would refer to as a temporary, which is what we're at, then a semi-permanent to a permanent type of vision for Main Street. I think we should start that conversation sooner rather than later.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Cummings. Patiently waiting, Alderman Clayton.
Thank you so much. I wanted to make sure that your members were able to speak before I go and become long-winded. First, I want to address the parking study. Ward 3 was one of the lucky wards that also had an extra bite at the apple, and I truly appreciated that, Director Cummings. Those that did attend, as well as those that I was able to brief about it, we're very happy that and knew that you were listening to them and your explanation of things, I think was helpful. I won't reiterate it because what Alderman Lopez said was basically some of the design issues that you had spoken to us about too. So thank you very much. As far as the barriers in the downtown, I think it's important, and I'm glad you brought up the future vision that we have to look at tomorrow and not just this summer. I think it's something that's been talked about, trying to calm Main Street, even without these barriers, even when people were just doing the sidewalk dining. I got a lot of complaints about the noise levels and so on. That's about the only concern that I'm getting right now is because of the traffic, the motorcycles, those people that have are unchecked. I know that we did a short stint where the police were out there monitoring decibels and so on. If we could kind of get some more work with that to try to, whether we're ticketing, whether we're warning, whatever we're doing, putting up signs, please, whatever it is that we have to do. I know those that live at the Jackson Falls condos there, they hear it. There are people at that light. And over by where Peddlers is and so on. And I know even further down, the people that are dining are getting that complaint over by Martha's where people are at the lights, or Fratello's or any of those things. It can become annoying. So I think we really do need to work the light schedule so people just move down Main Street and not be stopped as much as that. We need to look at the decibel levels because that affects the dining experience. And I do think we need to look towards tomorrow. Personally, I like this idea. I would like to make every single person on Main Street happy. I know that we probably can't, but we should try to do everything we can. And I feel confident, Director Cummings, that you are trying to work with these people and do that. So, I think that's all that I really had to say, which is a lot. And I wanted to thank Alderman Schmidt for bringing up the calming and the drive-through. I had heard the same thing, but completely went out of my head, but it was a great recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Clay. Bat and cleanup, Alderman Dowd.
Yes, just real quickly, I hope. Director Cummings, very shortly, we're going to be having to have West Pearl Street one lane with no parking because of the Performing Arts Center when they start having cranes there. I noticed the poles have been moved. I'm not sure we have all the companies moving their wires across the street, but the poles are up anyway. And can you just address that real quickly? How does that impact the barriers and stuff?
Thank you, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development. Thank you for the question, Alderman Dowd. So to answer your question, the construction management firm is working hand in hand with the city and coordinating directly on the barriers. So when the Performing Arts Center barriers get put up, it will be done at the exact same time as when the barriers are put up for Main Street. And to your point, yes, West Pearl Street will be going down to one lane. That is going to be happening sometime in the next week or so. And it is going to be done again for the Performing Arts Center. It would have to happen even absent any of the barrier conversation happening on Main Street. It's due to the Performing Arts Center construction project. And so we're working through all these issues now, and we have a plan in place that engineering has signed off on.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Any other remarks by Alderman? Seeing none. Moving next to public comment. Is there anybody out there from the public wishing to comment on any items in particular? Seeing none, we'll open up again to remarks from Alderman. Alderman Dow.
Just real quickly, I sent out through Donna some pictures of the Kessler Farm tank that's coming down. And if anybody was on earlier, I showed the pictures of what it is this afternoon, and it's 2/3 down. I'm guessing another day or two it'll be completely gone, and they'll be preparing for the concrete tank that's going to be taking its place. So There's a lot of work going on.
All right. Any other remarks? Alderman Lopez?
Quick question for Dr. Cummings, if he's still here.
Yes.
Do we have any idea what's going on with that housing program that you, or housing development on Main Street that's going to go into the Indian Head Plaza? I mean, Indian Head Bank? I imagine it's not going to be low
Sure.
housing.
What we should be pleased about is we have a building that is 100% unoccupied, vacant, and blighted, and it has been that way for years. And we now have a developer who's looking to make some economic investment into that structure, looking to put in 15 residential units. And that is slated to go under construction this summer. And that is something that I think we all should be proud of, because it's going to put an otherwise eyesore, so to speak, back positively on the rolls for us, and activate an otherwise empty building that has Main Street frontage. And also, Alderman Lopez, to your point that you made earlier this evening, we are going to have some significant construction projects happening in and around Main Street for the first time in decades. I actually said this at a previous meeting that probably is worth reiterating here tonight. Main Street has not seen the positive economic investment that it's going to be seeing in decades, decade upon decade. So we have not just what we're doing here in City Hall. We have a transit center rehabilitation project that's coming in the next year or so. We have the School Street project. We have the Performing Arts Center project. We have the Indian Head Bank building project. All happening within a short vicinity of one another. That is going to cause logistical issues in general. And we just should start to be thinking and planning and understanding all that. But it's good economic investment for the downtown nonetheless.
I mean, it's definitely a very good problem to have. And I didn't really have any hopes that a large historic landmark building that used to be a lawyer's office was likely to fit that immediate particular need. And I'm not really looking forward to all of the concerns that demographic might have about that area. I mean, there's AA meetings that meet there and have for years, and that's something that some people might take issue with. There's a lot of nighttime activity on that street that, again, that's what that street's used to, and that's what the business is there for. Someone living there might not like it, but I get that you're not a wizard and you can't make everything happen perfectly. So I will just wait for the TD Bank rooming house to happen.
All right. Any other comment? I would like to say, Alderman Lopez, perhaps maybe you and I can talk to our friends on social media, trying to find out what happened to the original Indian Head that was above the portal to that particular building.
My understanding is it's actually over by Fairgrounds Middle School somewhere.
Oh,
Yeah,
maybe
don't look too closely for it.
maybe we'll take that offline. Okay.
A massacre of some type happened over there.
Oh, no, I don't want to get into that.
Okay.
Okay. All right. See, no other comment? Okay, I don't see a need to go into non-public session. So therefore, Alderman Schmidt, do you have a motion?
I do indeed. I move to adjourn by roll call.
Will you please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt says yes, Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
and Alderman Tensa.
Yes.
All five agree it's time to go to home.
Motion carries. And again, I would like to thank everybody for their diligence. It was a good meeting tonight, and I'll declare the meeting closed at 8:49. Good night, everyone.